Hello everyone, this is Kevin from Craven Financial Solutions. Today we're going to be talking about W-4s and having them filled out for your withholding from your jobs. I get asked this question a lot and every year it comes up. So I thought I would approach this in a video so that you guys would be able to refer to it and fill out your W-4s whenever you have a new job. It's important to remember to change your W-4 whenever you have a life event happen that would change your need for withholdings. Uh, there's a few things that are going to affect that. Number one is getting married. That's the most common one. Once you get married, you want to change your W-4 to change it to a married filing joint amount. Unless you're planning on filing separately, then you can leave it as is. A huge life-changing event that would also affect your W-4 would be having a child, or possibly having a child that is now no longer going to be on your tax return. So say they hit the age of 18 and they're not going to school, then they're going to be dropping them off that return, and now all of a sudden that's going to change the outcome of your return, and then you would want to update your W-4 to reflect that so you don't find yourself owing money at the end of the year. So, as we jump into this, we are going to head into the IRS website, irs.gov. That is the IRS's website, not irs.com. irs.com is a completely different thing. You don't want to go down. So, in irs.gov, I pulled up W-4. I searched it, pulled up the form. This is the fillable form for the W-4 that you can hand your employer. First steps are the basic everybody does: fill in your name, last name, social security number, address, city, state, zip. Once we get down to step 1, box C, this is where it's going to have an impact on what's withheld from your checks. So this first box, what they're trying to find out is what is your standard deduction? What is your filing status? So if you are single or married filing separate, your standard deduction is going to be the same, and that will fall on that first box. Those amounts change every year. The standard deduction amounts change every year. You don't need to update your W-4 every year. You just need to update it if you go from, let's say, being single, checking this box, to now all of a sudden you got married. You should be checking the second box. So the second box is for married filing joint and qualified widower, since they share the same amount for a standard deduction. And then the last filing status that has a different standard deduction would be head of household. I will be posting a video in a little bit about head of household and what that is and who qualifies. Some of you are very confused on what head of household is, so this is why I'll be posting a video next week on head of household. So we have now made it through the first step. We have all of our identifiers. We have our name, our social, our address, and what our filing status will be. Step number 2 only needs to be gone through if you have one or more jobs, or if you're married and both of you guys work. Then you would want to access step 2. However, step 2 actually only affects step number 4. So we'll get to step 2 after we've done step 3. Step 3, what they're wanting to know here is what dependents you have on the return. So if you look here, they'll say your total income will be less than $200,000 or less than $400 for a married filing joint return. The reason is because once you hit these numbers, now we're talking about phase out. We're talking about phasing out child tax credits, talking about phasing out other dependent credits, and that's the reason why those particular numbers are placed on this W-4. If your total wages at the end of the year are going to be above that, you're not going to be getting these credits in order to reduce your tax liability. Therefore, it should not be a part of the equation. However, for most of us, our numbers are going to be below these totals. So what we need to do is we need to multiply the number of dependents by their appropriate categorization. So, if you have any qualifying children, and you can look on our online school and start taking classes on dependents and filing statuses and other classes to learn the definition of a qualifying child. But basically summed up, if it is your child, a child that meets the criteria of a qualifying child for you, and they're under the age of 17, take that number, multiply it by 2,000. So if you have one child, one qualifying child, your number here will be 2,000. If you have two, your number here would be 4,000, and so forth. Now, anybody else you're claiming as a dependent on your tax return that is not a qualifying child would go on the next line down. And you're going to multiply that by 500 because you get a $500 credit for each one of those dependents that is not a qualifying child. So let's say in this case we had two dependents that are not qualifying children. So 2 times the 500 would give us the 1,000. So our line 3 total would end up being $5,000. This informs your employer that you're going to receive a $5,000 credit on your tax return. So they know what your total income is, they know what your filing status is, so they have a general idea of what your tax liability should be, and they know that you're getting a $500 credit or a $5,000 credit. That allows them to adjust what they withhold from your check to bring your tax return as close to zero as possible. This means that if you have that $5,000 credit, they're going to take less out of your check in order to compensate, which means you'll have more in your check during the year as you're getting paid. We've now made it down to step 4. This is the step where step 2 comes into play. What they're wanting to know on step 4, box A, is do you have any other income not included on jobs? So this is going to be, do you have a stock sale? Do you have any rentals? Do you have some form of income that is not going to show up under a job? That number would go right here. For most of us, that number will be 0. Now, step 4, part B, is where step 2 starts to come into play, because they're wanting to know, do you have any deductions that are not standard deductions? So are you going to itemize your deductions this year? If you itemize your deductions, they do have a little worksheet for you down below, right here, step 4B, deductions worksheet. And then what you'd want to do is you'd want to put in your estimated itemized deductions. So we're going to say in this case, since we're filing this as if we're a married couple, we're going to say that our itemized deductions end up being $26,000. If our itemized deductions are $26,000, we would then take a look over here as a married couple on line 2, entering 25,100, and since line 1 is greater than line 2, we would go ahead and enter the result here. The result being $900, because we subtract line 2 from line 1. Difference of $900. Now we work our way down to line 4. Enter an estimate of your student loan interest or deductible IRA contributions. So if you have student loan interest that you're paying, then you are going to enter that amount that you expect to have at the end of the year here. Also, if you're contributing to an IRA that is deductible, so this is going to be your traditional IRAs, what you're going to end up putting here is any amount that you would be deducting as well. Let's say in this case they have student loans at the maximum amount of $2,500. We're going to add in our line 3 and our line 4 which brings us to 3,400. And then we'll work our way back up. If you notice here, it says enter the number on 4B. We'd work our way all the way back up here. 4B, we would have 3,400 as our total. Now, for the extra withholdings, this is where the multiple job situation comes into play. With this, on step 2, part C, they want to make sure that you're checking this box, that way they know that there is more than one job making more than one withholding, because there's going to be a slight adjustment for your employer to make to do that. So you want to make sure that box is checked if you have more than one job. We come all the way back down to that worksheet again, and what they're going to have you do here is they're going to ask you, hey, do you have 2 jobs, or are you married filing jointly and both of you work a job? If that's the case, what you're going to do is you're going to use the number they give you on the table below and place that on line 1. So this table below, we were saying that we are working with a married filing joint couple. So the higher paying of the 2 is going to be in this column. So what we're looking for here is, let's say we have a married filing joint couple that's making, one of them is making $85,000. So we would find the column they land in. So they're at 85,000. That's going to be right here at the 80, between 80 and $999,000. We're going to place that. So we're going to work down this row, and then we're going to find the income for the spouse. So in this case, we're going to say the spouse is making $55,000. We'll work our way all the way over to the $55,000 area, and this gives us the number from the table they want us to use, which is 8,340. We will place that number, 8,340, on line 1. And it'll tell us to go all the way down to line 3, because they're going to ask how many pay periods. We're going to say that this person gets paid monthly, so we're going to put 12 there. What they'll ask you to do next is to divide your amount. So if we divide our amount by 12, it's going to be $695. So they're going to want us to enter $695 all the way up here on additional tax withheld. This informs the employer using the standard chart isn't enough because we have another job coming in. We need to make sure that we have an additional $695 held from each one of those checks in order to meet our tax obligation at the end of the year. Now, also, if you had 3 jobs, so you're not in this 2 job or more situation, we're going to do something similar. You're going to complete lines 2A, 2B, and 2C in order to determine that same exact amount that's going to land on your 4C line, but it's just going to be a slightly different step to do it. So we find the appropriate amount from table on the table below using annual wages from the highest paying job and the lowest paying job. So it's the same thing. It's just this time, if you had somebody who was making $85,000, but they had a second job where they had $20,000, and the spouse was still making the $55,000, you would then, instead of using the columns that you did before, you would be using the $85,000, and then you would look for $20,000, which is right here. So your number would actually change, and then you would enter that number in and do the same exact steps as before. And you want to make sure that you're repeating this for each one of the jobs that you have. So the reason why this number would then go down to about 510 is because, yeah, it's lower, you have more jobs, you have more income, but your other jobs are also going to be having more withheld. So all of it working together actually works out to make your taxable withholding amount correct to bring your tax return as close to zero as possible. I know it sounds super complicated, but this is actually a very accurate system, and it is one of the only good things that came out of the tax changes of 2018, the Job and Tax Cut Act. Once again, though, if you don't want to go through the worksheets, I highly recommend using this app the IRS has set up. You would just go to the website irs.gov /W4 app and walk through the steps in order to get the W4 that you want. I think it's an amazing calculator. I was looking at it before. Perfect for somebody who wants to be sure that it's right and isn't comfortable filling out a worksheet by hand. Well, that completes our video for today. Like I said, next week we plan on uploading a video on head of household. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment below. If you are able to do all three of those, we can get you your special gift. And until next time, everybody, have a great day.